honored excellencies, fellow delegates, and dear colleagues out there. I'm really happy and proud to be able to come here, and so honored to be asked to be part of this conference with so many perspectives and so much knowledge. I would like to start to thank you. I would like to start to thank the Ministry of Education of this beautiful Seychelles and the possibility to come here. And I would like to thank the IECD, and I would like to thank the UNESCO, of course. And my perspective is a practical one. I'm an organization leader, and I will talk from a practical point of view on how to work, our experience in Sweden on working with data in early childhood. I will give you a brief walking through our experience and what conclusions we have come to. And in these days, you will have the possibility to really go in deep from a variety of perspectives, because this conference has a vast number of presentations, and there will be a perspective for everyone. So mine is quite now an overall presentation of the Swedish experience. I forgot to tell you, my name is Ina Furtenbach Linden, and I'm the Executive Director of the Preschool Organization of Gothenburg, Sweden. We started early. We started 1930 to collect health data in Sweden. And it was growth, and it was children's weight and length. We started very early. And it's been a long period of progress. It's been a long period of collecting data in education in different sectors. But we started computerizing and digitalizing data already in the 80s. And for the countries and you that come in now and start, I think you will catch up with these 80 years, no problem. Because digitalization of data gives us a completely new possibility to handle enormous amounts of data. So what for us now has become actually the focus, it's the ethical use of data and the ethical collection of data. So I will go into that also a bit. We started with handwritten data. It was papers and documents, people all over the country collecting data, nurses, teachers writing things down. We had loads of papers. We had cupboards and schools and doctor stations full of papers, boxes. Sometimes something burnt down. Sometimes there was a water flood. Sometimes somebody threw it because they didn't know what it was. And that means a great loss of data. And that's a situation that none of you will have to come in anymore. But it did, in fact, anyway, allow the policymakers to have a clear perspective on the decisions they want to make on childhood. Because that is actually all data is. Data in itself is nothing. Data is only important as a base, as a knowledge, to give us knowledge to make decisions. That's what it's for. And for us leaders, to get knowledge and analyze and get an understanding of what actions are needed. Where do we have to focus? Where do we have to create actions? The next step for Sweden, after all this data coming along, Sweden realized it has to be a legal system. It has to somehow be a legal control of all this data. And so a law came, and it decided the purpose of data collection. And it was for information, of course, for investigation, to be able to go in depth searching answers to certain questions, and also research. And the point of research is that you don't really know what you're looking for, the difference between investigation and research, and you will find things you never expected. It also decided that it must be objective. There's no point with data collection if it's not objective. To be able to be used by us fairly to make good decisions. It also decided that data is the access of everyone. It is our national heritage. It's us, actually, that the data is about. Us and our children and our parents. That's why it has to be the property of everyone. And it must also be accessible by everyone. Each and every one of you and your families must be able to go into the computer and find data and see, is this what they said? It's a question of building trust. It also said, and that was quite early on, that statistics have to be recognizable from other data, the government statistics, by a logo or a stamp or something. That's even more important now, because we live in an age where Google knows more about us than any country. There's so much information about us in private systems and companies. That's why the government data, the government official statistic has to be marked out. It has to be visible. Also for these lovely children that we saw, when they start investigating, their teacher starts, can you look for facts about this or that? They must be able to say, to separate, oh, this was Wikipedia, anybody could have put it there, or this is actually stamped statistics from our government. Really important. Talking about the government has a really central role in data collection and use of data. It has to be owned by the government. That's what we decided anyway. Because if data is owned by private companies, things can change. Private companies can change direction. They can close down. They can open someplace. And they are always, of course, that's the nature of private companies, driven by profit. That's why the data about the population has to be owned by the government. The government must also decide which methods to use, because these are ethical methods. And the government is who cares about the people. The only body that can take responsibility for ethical collection of data. That means also selecting the people that report and educating them. The government can't do everything on its own. So with us, it started with different officers and different authorities being appointed as official collectors of data, like the school office, the educational office, traffic. All these different bodies were authorized to collect data for the government. This sort of delegation is important to be able to create the base number. And it's not only that, it's also because these local bodies have the local knowledge, and they also know why is a certain type of data important for education, for example. Which type of data are important for us? What do we need? These bodies also decide, together with the government, which data to collect, because they are the experts. Which data to be spread, because that is also important. All this data collection is not done to be stored in computers. It's done to be publicized, it's done to be known to the public, and to be known to all bodies. And to help us gather data for planning, of course, to plan education, for plan evaluation, and for development. For those of you that are here tomorrow, I will talk much more in depth about how we use data to plan building of schools, educating of teachers, and all these things. So I'll be happy if you're interested in that. Decentralization of collection of data. It will make it possible to easily manage much larger quantities of data for different sectors, to giving this authority to others. It also gives the possibility to handle critical issues, because there will be critical issues. There will be problems, there will be mistakes, there will always be people who do things wrong. It's the nature of us human beings. And by delegating these responsibilities, it means that an issue can be resolved there. It doesn't have to affect the whole system. It can be solved right and there in that body that reported it. That's our experience. It allows data to be contextualized. It allows data to be about the people living in an area, because I'm sure that also here, different areas have different properties and different needs. So Sweden came to the point that we have to legalize, we have to make laws about other externals producing data. So it's not only the government, we have to control these other people collecting data. So there's a law that actually puts the responsibility on these offices, like the educational office. They are by law responsible not only for the data they produced, but also to quality secure it, to have a quality process of their own production of data. They're also obligated to continuously report to the government about what they do. And this is really interesting, and I like this one. They are obligated to openly show mistakes and faults. And they have to do that responsibly. And they have to correct what they do wrong. They have to analyze why it went wrong. And they have to learn to use it to learn. And it's one of my favorite laws, actually, that stimulates us to learn more. Next practical thing, what does it cost to put up a data system? Well, you're lucky, you're starting in the computer age. The actual storage and collecting of data costs nothing, more or less. It's so cheap. It can be really big systems, they cost very little. What costs are the people working with it. They are the ones that cost. And what's important is the persons that report. All these teachers, nurses, officials out in the country that report, they cost money because they have to be educated. They have to be trained. They have to be educated in the systems. They have to be educated in the mind frame. They have to understand the responsibility. They have to be very thorough. They have to understand how to report. And they have to be continuously educated because computer science changes and there will be new systems in 2 years. But also to keep them in the frame of mind. Because we all know humans. So we know that you can be really dedicated for 2 years and then things change and you sort of, it's not so important anymore. So they have to be continuously educated, continuously taken in and being reminded of the importance of what they're doing. That's an investment. The next investment is in authority control. Because there needs to be people in the authorities, people that select which data to collect, what is relevant for us, what do we need to know. People that control the collection, which is the most efficient way to collect. People that analyze, strategics, researchers that analyze. People that quality assure, with an education in quality that can make our systems quality assured. Communicators that know how to publish, to know how to get things known, and continuous development. These are the investments. It's in the education and in the staff and in the people. We're lucky, the systems are cheap today. This is a really important issue, trust. That's the ethical part of collecting data. Because for a government to collect loads of data about the population have to feel trust. They have to know that this data is going to be used for the good of our people. So it's creating trust is one of the most important tasks around data collection. So 2011, Sweden created a law and a document for what does it take, which indicators creates trust in people. It was based on research. What makes people trust? Because we live in a time, okay, in investigations, the Swedish people, they feel high trust. They trust the government. But we live in a time when things are so quickly changing all over Europe and also in America and probably also in your countries, where people lose trust in politicians and they lose trust in authorities. Look at America, what's happening. So people are quickly losing trust. So it's also really important to have a strategy to keep trust. The criteria that Sweden identified was to keep trust. The data has to be relevant, which means that the person sitting there collecting data, like when you take your little son or daughter to the nurse's office and the nurse report things and measure and then she asks about your sexual identity, you will be very suspicious. What has no relevance to what we're actually doing? It's very important that the people that collect the data ask relevant questions. And it's really important for us to answer honestly and to get true information into the systems. Not to give the idea that there's a sort of second aim hidden behind the actual collection. So relevance has to be accurate, has to be really precise. So the systems have to be asking questions so precisely that whoever is out there in the country answers precisely. has to have a timeliness. It must answer questions that we have now. There's no point in getting answers to 10-year-old questions and the future we know nothing about. It has to answer the questions that we have now. Like, I need to know, how many autistic children do I have? How many children with special needs? How many? I need to know this now for planning. It has to be punctual. This is really important for trust. If you say that this is going to come out the 2nd of February, it's going to have to come out the 2nd of February. Because people, that creates trust. To be punctual creates trust. It has to be reliable. People have to know that when this data comes out with this stamp on, it is the truth. So it has to be reliable. It has to be comparable. It has to be able to be compared with other countries, with other cities, with other organizations. And it has to be coherent, which means that the data that comes from my office has to be, say the same thing as the data that comes from the other office or the next office. It has to be coherent. I will move on to, because I think I've taken a lot of time. We were asked to leave a last slide that you will all see in the conference. Every speaker in the conference will leave a last slide with, this is what I would like to bring. This is what I would like to put on the table according to our experience. And so this is what I would like to put on the table for the conference, for these days, coming from the experience of Sweden with this long tradition. And actually, we call ourselves the promised land of data, but I prefer to say that we're actually the promised land of early childhood education, because we've been doing that for a long time. So start with conceptualize the data system, which is decide which data to be collected and why. What do we want to know about it? Issue a legislation to set out systems. There has to be laws that control the collection. Cannot be random, Wild West. Has to be laws to control it. Allocate the financial resources to operate data system. Of course, without budget, we can't do anything. Has to be budget. Honest, serious budget about how much does it cost to educate these people? How much does it cost to do it? If it's too much, the costume has to be smaller, and we can't collect all that data. We have to go smaller. Hire and educate human resources to operate system, which means the people that actually report, educate them, find them. Fix responsibilities on all levels. Very important. Set the responsibilities on all levels. Create, maintain, and develop the data system. Thank you so much, and have a really good conference.